Ever wondered how the wisest man in the world ended his days? Sounds like a contradiction, right? Solomon, the king who had it all, divine wisdom, unimaginable wealth, and the respect of entire nations, saw his life take a turn no one could have predicted. How does someone so deeply connected to God lose their way? And more importantly, what does that mean for you and me? The story of Solomon's final days isn't just about a king. It's about choices, consequences, and the surprising grace of God, even in the darkest moments. Think you know everything about Solomon? Well, get ready to uncover a side of him that most people have never heard of. King Solomon is one of those names that stands out, even for people who don't know much about the Bible. His reputation as a wise and just man has transcended centuries, leaving behind a legacy that still inspires us today. Ruling Israel for 40 years, he wasn't just a powerful king, but also an unmatched strategist, known for his incredible ability to resolve conflicts with finesse. Picture someone being called in to settle the most complicated disputes, and, with a single decision, earning the respect and admiration of everyone around. That was Solomon. But what made Solomon so unique? Maybe it was his knack for balancing wealth, power, and wisdom, something many leaders dream of but few actually achieve. Sure, he amassed unimaginable treasures, but his greatest asset was, without a doubt, the divine wisdom granted to him by God. It's fascinating to think about how he used that gift to transform Israel into a shining example of prosperity. Imagine living in a place where justice was served with both fairness and compassion, a rarity in most kingdoms of that time. One hallmark of his reign was the harmony he fostered among Israel's tribes. Solomon understood that leading such a diverse people took more than sheer authority. It required winning their hearts. It's kind of like leading a team at work. You can hold the title of boss, but without earning trust, success is a long shot. Solomon had this incredible way of inspiring loyalty, while always pointing back to God as the source of his wisdom and achievements. His reign was also synonymous with opulence. The Bible paints a picture of gold, silver, and precious stones pouring into Israel, turning the kingdom into an economic and cultural hub. There's a valuable lesson here. External success often reflects internal alignment. Solomon sought divine guidance before making big decisions, which is something we can apply to our own lives. Think about it. Before you act, do you check in with your source of wisdom? Maybe it's time to start. But Solomon's wisdom wasn't just theoretical. It was practical too. Take the famous case of the two mothers. This story showcases how he could see beyond appearances and cut straight to the heart of the matter. It's a lesson we can carry with us. What really matters isn't always what you see on the surface, but the essence of the issue. Resolving conflicts with empathy and discernment is something we can all strive to learn from him. Interestingly, Solomon's personal life mirrored his inner struggles. Despite his incredible wisdom, he faced the same challenges every human does. His highs and lows remind us that even those with extraordinary gifts are still prone to mistakes and lessons along the way. It's a powerful reminder that, even when we fall short, we can still learn and grow. After all, God chose Solomon despite his imperfections, showing us that divine purpose doesn't rely on our perfection. As we dig deeper into Solomon's life, it becomes clear he was more than just a king. He was a living example of how choices shape our destiny. From his glorious beginnings to the trials that followed, his story challenges us to reflect. What are we doing with the gifts God has given us? At the end of the day, wisdom without action is like buried treasure, worthless until it's uncovered and put to use. Solomon wasn't born with a guaranteed spot on the throne. Even though he was chosen by God, his rise to power was anything but smooth. It was packed with challenges and family drama. Imagine growing up knowing there were people around you scheming to snatch away what's rightfully yours. That's exactly what he dealt with, especially with Adonijah, his half-brother, who tried to seize the throne before Solomon even had the chance to be crowned. It just goes to show that, even with a divine calling, the journey to fulfilling your purpose isn't always a walk in the park. The support of strategic allies made all the difference in helping Solomon overcome those early obstacles. Bathsheba, his mother, and the prophet Nathan played critical roles in ensuring God's will was carried out. They stepped in and advocated with King David, who, despite being in his final days, reaffirmed Solomon as his successor. This teaches us a valuable lesson about the importance of having the right people in our corner. So, who are the Bathshebas and Nathans in your life? The ones fighting to help you achieve what you're destined for. Once crowned, Solomon showed remarkable wisdom in dealing with his adversaries. Not only did he consolidate his power, but he also struck a delicate balance between mercy and decisiveness. Adonijah, for instance, was spared at first, but Solomon didn't hesitate to act when it became clear he was still plotting. It's a tough balance to strike, but an essential one. Being fair without being a pushover. In our daily lives, this might look like knowing when to give someone a second chance and when it's time to set firm boundaries. Taking the throne came with the monumental task of unifying a kingdom fractured by internal disputes. Solomon understood that leadership wasn't just about brute strength, it was about having a clear vision. His approach reminds us that a true leader thinks about the greater good, not just their own agenda. For us, this might mean making choices that benefit not just ourselves, but also our families, friends, and even the communities we're part of. What's striking is how Solomon leaned on God from the very beginning. Even with so many challenges ahead, he turned to his Creator, fully aware that no human strategy alone could secure his success. That dependence is such a powerful reminder. In moments of uncertainty, seeking divine guidance can make all the difference between failure and victory. Have you ever thought about starting your projects with a prayer or a moment of meditation, asking for wisdom with every decision? It's worth considering. The start of Solomon's reign was defined by strategic decisions that shaped his future. He built political and religious alliances, strengthening both his position as king and his relationship with God. That makes you wonder, are we building bridges that support our journey, or are we letting conflicts steer us off course? Sometimes, a small act of reconciliation can unlock doors we never imagined possible. As Solomon's story unfolds, we see how quickly he grew in stature and influence. His initial focus on stabilizing the kingdom became the foundation for everything that followed. Just like a skyscraper needs a strong foundation, Solomon knew that his wisdom would only be effective if there was structure and order in place. And so, his journey continues, showing us that the pursuit of wisdom is just the starting point for something far greater. Solomon's request for wisdom from God is one of the most iconic moments in his story. When given the chance to ask for anything, wealth, a long life, or victory over his enemies, he chose something far deeper: the discernment to govern with justice. That choice shows a rare kind of humility, because instead of focusing on his own interests, he prioritized the well-being of the people God had entrusted to him. It's a powerful example of how true greatness comes from thinking beyond yourself. God, moved by Solomon's request, not only gave him wisdom but also blessed him with wealth and honor, proving that when we focus on what truly matters, unexpected blessings often follow. That's something we can take into our own lives. When was the last time you thought about what you're prioritizing? Maybe what you really need isn't more money or status, but a deeper wisdom to handle life's challenges. One of the most famous demonstrations of Solomon's wisdom is the case of two mothers fighting over a child. He proposed cutting the baby in half, an apparently harsh solution that revealed the real mother's love through her willingness to give up her claim. This story is a timeless reminder of the importance of looking beyond words and appearances to uncover the truth. In our day-to-day lives, this might mean digging a little deeper before making snap decisions. But Solomon's wisdom didn't stop at delivering justice. He was also a keen observer of nature and the author of proverbs that remain a treasure trove of wisdom today. His writings cover themes like hard work, humility, and the importance of revering God. It's fascinating how something written thousands of years ago still hits home. If you've never read Solomon's Proverbs, maybe it's time to check them out. They're short but powerful lessons that can completely shift the way you see life. Throughout his life, Solomon showed that true wisdom isn't static. It's a lifelong journey of learning. Even as the wisest man of his time, he continued to seek knowledge and understanding. That's a great reminder that it's never too late to learn something new. Why not take some time to pick up a new skill or dive into a topic you've always been curious about? Like Solomon, we can grow wiser with each passing day. An interesting aspect of Solomon's story is how he acknowledged that his wisdom was a gift from God, not something he earned on his own. This awareness kept him grounded in gratitude and dependence on God, at least during his early years. It's a valuable lesson for all of us. The more we recognize that our abilities and talents come from something greater, the better we can use them to serve others. Maybe it's worth asking yourself, how are you using the gifts you've been given? Solomon's wisdom, as extraordinary as it was just the beginning of something much bigger. His request from God paved the way for a reign marked by prosperity and historical impact. But as with any great blessing, there came significant responsibilities, and Solomon would face challenges that tested his faithfulness and discernment. That's a story for another time, as we continue to explore his incredible journey. The Temple of Jerusalem, built by Solomon, wasn't just an architectural marvel. It was a powerful symbol of God's presence among the people of Israel. Picture a building so magnificent that people traveled from far and wide just to see it. Adorned with gold, cedar from Lebanon, and perfectly crafted stone, the temple reflected Solomon's dedication to something far greater than himself. At the same time, it teaches us that our greatest accomplishments should always point to God, not just to our own glory. Located on Mount Moriah, the site carried deep historical meaning. This was the place where Abraham, in obedience, nearly sacrificed his son Isaac. That connection made the temple more than just a physical structure. It was a reminder of the covenant between God and his people. Today, we can take an important lesson from this. Our places of worship, whether a church or a quiet corner at home, should remind us of our connection to God and the importance of seeking Him daily. The planning and construction of the temple were monumental undertakings. Solomon relied on thousands of workers, skilled artisans, and even international partnerships to secure the finest materials. This shows us that even spiritual projects require practical organization and teamwork. What can we learn from this? If building God's temple took so much human effort, imagine what we can achieve when we combine our talents and work with a clear purpose. One standout feature of the temple was the Holy of Holies, a sacred space reserved for the Ark of the Covenant, representing God's presence. Only the high priest could enter, and only once a year. This reminds us that while God is always accessible, reverence is crucial. In a world that often trivializes the sacred, maybe it's time to reflect on how we approach our spiritual practices. Are we setting aside time for something truly special? When the temple was completed, Solomon offered one of the most beautiful prayers recorded in the Bible, asking God to hear the prayers of everyone who came to the temple, Israelites and foreigners alike. This inclusive attitude was groundbreaking, showing that God's heart has always been for all humanity. Maybe it's time for us to rethink how we can be more welcoming and open to those who cross our paths. The temple's dedication was a moment of celebration and consecration. Sacrifices were made, songs were sung, and God's glory filled the space so profoundly that the priests couldn't even continue their work. It's a powerful reminder of how God responds when we wholeheartedly dedicate something to Him. How about dedicating a personal project or goal to God, asking for His guidance and leaving the results in His hands? It might just be the missing step to experiencing something extraordinary. However, as grand as the temple was, it was only a reflection of God's faithfulness, not a replacement for it. Solomon understood this, and his prayer made it clear. The temple was a place to seek God's presence, but true commitment came from the hearts of the people. Just as Solomon pointed others to God, his story challenges us to let spirituality guide our decisions. And this becomes even more relevant as we dive deeper into the next chapters of his life. Solomon, widely known for his wisdom, was also defined by choices that pulled him away from God. Over time, his pursuit of political alliances led him to marry women from foreign nations who worshipped other gods. And, as so many stories remind us, small decisions can have massive consequences. The king who once dedicated the temple to the Lord began allowing idolatrous practices in Israel. This twist of events is a sobering reminder that wisdom without vigilance can turn into a trap. With these marriages came temples and altars for foreign gods, something God had explicitly forbidden. Solomon, who was meant to be the ultimate example of faithfulness, began compromising his beliefs. It makes us think, how often do seemingly harmless compromises chip away at our values? Have you ever found yourself going against what you know is right, just to please others? It's a question that calls for constant self-awareness. Even with his mistakes, Solomon didn't lose his wisdom, but it started to fade under the shadow of his choices. It's like a bright lamp that slowly gathers dust. The light is still there, but it doesn't shine as brilliantly as before. This shows that even those blessed with great gifts can lose their way if they lose focus on what truly matters. Here's the takeaway. Staying connected to God and rooted in your principles is key to keeping your path clear. The consequences of Solomon's unfaithfulness didn't take long to surface. God raised up adversaries to challenge his kingdom, something that had seemed unthinkable before. This teaches us that no earthly security, whether power, wealth, or influence, can hold up when we're distant from God. Maybe you've had times when everything seemed to fall apart. Those moments, as tough as they are, can be invitations to realign your priorities. What's striking is how this chapter of Solomon's life contrasts with his promising beginning. It's almost like a three-act tragedy: a glorious start, a middle full of achievements, and a decline marred by poor choices. It's a reminder that life is more of a marathon than a sprint. Starting strong isn't enough. You've got to finish with the same determination. So what steps can you take today to make sure your journey stays true to your values? Even in the midst of his downfall, God's hand was still present. Solomon wasn't abandoned, but his choices brought consequences for both himself and the kingdom of Israel. This balance between divine mercy and justice is a recurring theme in the Bible. Maybe it's an opportunity to reflect. Are we reaping the results of seeds we sowed without thinking? The good news is there's always time to start fresh, because God's mercy is always within reach. Solomon's decline wasn't the end of his story, but a reminder that none of us are invincible. Even the wisest man in the world faced internal battles that shaped his life. It's as if his story whispers, "Be careful, no one is beyond falling." Yet, at the same time, it points to the hope of redemption, because God never stops seeking a repentant heart. And so, we move toward the final chapters of his life, where the lessons become even more profound. Solomon left behind a legacy that transcends time. His years as king were filled with glory, wealth, and decisions that shaped the destiny of Israel. But his greatest impact wasn't just political or economic, it was spiritual. His proverbs and writings carry practical wisdom that's still relevant today. They touch on hard work, justice, humility, and reverence for God. Just imagine how different life would be if everyone followed the principles in Proverbs: fewer conflicts, more purpose, and a better balance between reason and emotion. But Solomon's legacy wasn't all about accomplishments. His failures are just as powerful as his successes, serving as warnings for all of us. He shows that no matter how great the gift you've been given, it can be wasted if you lose sight of your purpose. His life challenges us to stay alert. Are we letting distractions pull us away from what really matters? Maybe it's something as simple as procrastination, or as complicated as decisions that compromise our values. What's fascinating is how Solomon, with all his wisdom, recognized the futility of so much of what we chase after. In the book of Ecclesiastes, he reflects on life's brevity and the emptiness of accumulating wealth. His words carry a unique depth. Everything is meaningless. It's like he's calling us to look beyond the material and focus on what truly matters. Are you spending your time and energy on things that have eternal value, or just on what's fleeting? Despite his flaws, the prosperity of Solomon's reign was undeniable. Israel experienced peace and abundance, setting a benchmark for future generations. That teaches us that even amidst our mistakes, God can work through us to accomplish great things. If you're wrestling with doubts about your purpose or the impact you can have, Solomon reminds us that God can use even our imperfections to create something beautiful. Solomon's story is also about new beginnings. His life, full of highs and lows, is a mirror of the human journey, a mix of victories and regrets. In the end, he points to the essence of it all, to fear God and keep His commandments. It's a reminder that no matter how far we wander, the way back to God is always open. Maybe now's the time for you to reassess your path and seek a fresh start. Solomon also teaches us about how our choices shape the future. His decisions didn't just affect his own life. They rippled through the kingdom and impacted generations to come. It's like throwing a stone into a pond and watching the ripples spread far beyond the point of impact. This challenges us to think about how our actions today are influencing tomorrow. Whether it's how we raise our kids, run our businesses, or interact with others, every choice leaves a mark. In the end, Solomon's legacy is a mosaic of wisdom, glory, failures, and redemption. His story reminds us that we don't have to be perfect to leave a lasting impact. We can learn from his successes and his mistakes, adjusting our steps while we still have the chance. And so, we wrap up this journey through Solomon's life with one lingering question. How do you want to be remembered? Maybe the answers lie in the lessons his life offers. Solomon's life is a mirror for all of us. It shows how even the greatest gifts can be lost without vigilance, but also how God is always ready to guide us back on track. So here's the big question. What are you doing with the time and talents God has placed in your hands? Are you building a legacy that will inspire others? Or are you just piling up fleeting achievements? Maybe it's time to pause and reflect. Solomon started by seeking God with all his heart, but got sidetracked by the distractions of power and vanity. How about you? What's been pulling your focus away? Have you thought about applying the lessons you've learned here to align your choices with something bigger? If this content gave you a fresh perspective, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. That way, you'll keep learning and getting inspired by stories and teachings that can transform your life. And hey, more videos are popping up on your screen right now. They're packed with insights that could make a real difference. Let's keep going together. See you in the next video.